Welcome to another fine day inside Godot 4, folks. Today, I'll be teaching you how to make an enemy script to make sure your enemy moves Okay, now I've put the obstacle set under the navigation 3D, created a new nav mesh, and then I've baked the nav mesh. What this tells the game is the following. 1. The enemy can move through these spaces only. It can't jump over that wall. It can't walk over that wall. That's what we're telling the game by baking the nav mesh. Now, we need to create the scene for the enemy itself. Enemy himself. Yeah, that's right. Under the character body 3D, we need to do something very special. That is, we need to call the navigation agent 3D. This will be the place where the most magic happens today. And we need to drop a mesh instance underneath the character body 3D so that our enemy will have a shape. I've dragged and dropped my OBJ file. I wish that you will drag and drop yours as well. After you've completed dragging and dropping your stuff into the scene, I want you to do something else as well. That is, I want you to create a convex collision mesh sibling. Click on that red mesh button that you saw earlier. Yeah, like I do. And go to the Create Simplified Convex Collision Sibling. Collision basically tells our enemy what obstacles it can walk through and what obstacles it cannot walk through. Now we'll start scripting. And I'm gonna call this enemy 1 because I already have an enemy and I can't save it like this. It'll be a huge hassle in the future, believe me. Welcome to Visual Studio Code, where the most amazing, magical things happen. As we start, I want you to do one thing. That is, I want you to make a reference to the navigation agent 3D node inside our scene, which I've decided to call nav for the scripting purposes. And then after this, I've decided to call upon the player so that we can get the player's position. So now I'm creating an instance of the navigation agent 3D by using the getNode, nodeType, and nodePath method. By using this method, you can pay an instance to whatever node you like, and you can use other nodes inside your script as you like. After this, I'm going into the scene and I'm gonna rename the navigation agent to Navi, and I'll also save the scene. I've made an enemy 1 TSCN. A TSCN is basically a short form for scene. I don't know how it makes it short. It's still nearly the same amount of characters, but whatever. Now, we'll pay an instance to the player as well. And then after this, we're opening parentheses, opening quotations, and we need to be very careful to type the root prefix and the main scene name and the subscene that you're trying to access. You need to be very careful at this step, because if this doesn't work, you'll get a null reference and you'll have 1,000 errors in your debugger. I've tried it and it goes very painfully. Please don't do it, okay? So I'm trying to access the target position property here, which will be equal to the global position of the player. What's the difference between global position and position? Is that a question in your head? If so, here's the answer. Global position will give you the position of the player inside a different scene, while position will give you the player's position, that is the player's origin position, inside its own scene. We don't want the origin's position. We want the player's current position inside our current scene. I hope you got that. I've opened the public override void physics process with the double delta so that we can code in our movement per physics frame. I want the target position to be updated as much as possible. That's why I put it under the underscore process function. I know it will sound idiotic because it will cause a lot of lag spikes, but hey, whenever the player collides with the enemy, there will still be a major lag spike. So I'm just spicing up my game right now. This isn't a bad method, but well, I didn't have another solution for this. This at least helps reduce the lag a little bit, putting that under the process function for some random reason that I do not know of. The variable direction is the getNextPathPosition property of the navigation agent subtracted from its own global position. What's the getNextPathPosition? When Godot is generating a path, the path has points on it, and the getNextPathPosition gives you the closest point to our enemy, and I'm normalizing the difference of the two so that we get the proper direction, and I'm declaring the velocity variable to the velocity property of the scene. Velocity is what the move and slide takes as a parameter, and we don't need to type velocity into the editor again and again. That's why I'm doing this. So velocity in the x direction will be direction in the x direction multiplied by the speed variable that we'll be exporting in the future. Velocity in the z direction. Now, what are we waiting for? The scripting is nearly done, and all we have to do is export the gravity variable as well as the speed variable. We have two things to do now. One is to get the speed variable, and the other is to get the gravity variable. Why is it not float and why is it int? Float makes stuff lag, and we already have enough lag in this scene. Believe me, you'll see the lag whenever the player collides with the enemy. I don't have a solution for that yet. I'll make sure to get you a solution in the next video. If the player is not on the floor, if the enemy is not on the floor, then we can say that the velocity in the y direction will be reduced every physics frame. What do we say inside the script editor for Godot to understand what I just said? Velocity in the y direction constantly subtracted by the gravity times the float delta. That's what you should say. I think you got that. What's delta? That could be a huge question in your mind. Delta is basically your frame rate, the frame rate your monitor is capable of, 1 divided by that. Okay? So now we're saying that the property of this thing, velocity, is equal to vel. And now we're calling the move and slide function. Yeah, it's done. Everything is done. Literally. That's how much code you need to write to make your enemy move. Godot makes things extremely easy, doesn't it? I'm just checking for a few things here. I'm entering a default value for the speed and gravity that can be adjusted inside the editor so that every time I drop an enemy into the scene, it has an already set velocity and other things. I'm dropping 2 enemies into the scene to test out our invention. I'm elevating the 2 enemies so that the player will get a little bit of time to escape from the enemies and they won't come right after him. That's it, the project is built. Now the enemies come after the player. Wherever I move the character, the enemies are trying to march towards that place. And for some reason, they refuse to climb up. Hello, any Godot devs watching? If so, make sure to fix this issue. I don't want to deal with this any further, okay? And, well, what more is there to speak about? That's it for this video. Thank you for watching. Lag spikes occur whenever you touch the enemy. I just got close to the enemy and see what happened. We'll try to fix this in the next video. So that's it for now. Bye, and I'll catch you later with more content.